But yeah, so me and Isar, we both read your article as well as many other kids our age, and we all took a lot of value from it. And just in general, having some abstract things such as college and explaining it in some analogy is always very good to understand. Like there's some definition of learning where it's taking something somebody doesn't understand and using things they do understand to relate the two and build those bridges. And I think that article did a lot of things successfully that way, right? So first question that we want to dive into is to play any game, whatever it may be, is you need to have some justification to be at the table, right? So in this case, within college, with having that $30,000 price tag that we were talking about, what are some reasons why that is justified and why somebody should even want to take a seat at the table to begin with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think to start, it's sort of surprising how many people don't even know why they're in college or don't realize like how big the stakes are. And so for me, it gives me some comfort to like just define them and even see, maybe I'm wrong, but at least I'm like working towards something. And for me, my opinion has changed throughout the years. But I think the main reason to go to college is the people. And that comes in a few different areas of why it's valuable. Number one is it really challenges your personal beliefs and philosophies and how you approach life. You know, being exposed to kids from China, kids from Korea, kids from California. For, you know, somebody from just Illinois who's only been exposed to Midwest people, it's like a new thing. And as a result, you get to learn that a lot of the assumptions that you thought about how the world worked are only true in the little part that you grew up in. And for me, that was like a really foundational change. And as a result, it sparked a tree of curiosity, planted a seed of curiosity that like, wow, I may not know how most things work in the world. So that was a huge thing. And then also all of the opportunities that you get professionally come as a result of the people that know you well. I mean, obviously you get some jobs over LinkedIn and stuff, but of all the stories that I've heard, by the time people are past their first job, it comes as a result of the people that they know. And I think that's more of a result that your network grows when you leave college, or people start thinking more critically about their professional network when they leave college, rather than it's just like after your first job, now people start recommending you for jobs. It's like, no, if you have a big enough network, you probably won't have to, go through a formal application process at all. And so to justify college, I think it's those two things. And then also credentializing yourself and being able to work hard and actually like develop a real skill set, something that you can actually put your leg on, or put your, plant your flag in, that like you understand how to sell things, you understand, computer science or whatever major that you chose to study. And that's a topic that the market values.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on the network thing a little bit. I was skimming through the article before this, and one of the things that you had mentioned in the beginning was like picking a good tribe, about the average of like 5 to 10 friends, which everyone's heard probably 1,000 times now. So now you're obviously like a senior. How'd you kind of like come into college, and like, now looking back, thinking about how you kind of built that network and found all those people, what are some of those like action steps you took to kind of find that tribe that you have?
Yeah. A lot of it just comes from being really, really open. Like, I think you'd be surprised at how many people you come across and have the opportunity to have a genuine interaction with every single day. For example, when I was living in my dorm, every single day I left my door open whenever I was doing work. As long as I wasn't changing, my door was open and there was music playing. And I formed a ton of friends as a result. Like 8 out of the 11 roommates that I have right now all lived in my same dorm my freshman year.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
And obviously there's other watering holes you can go into, right? Like clubs and stuff like that. But my general approach is just to have genuine interactions. And when you find somebody that you see potential in as like a really good friend, right? Somebody that you sort of hit it off with for a little bit, not being afraid to pursue that. and to show that person, hey, I'm really interested in you. I want to get to know you better. Let's get coffee. Let's do something. I think a lot of people, you have a good interaction and then you sort of let it die off. But for me, and when I look back at a lot of the good relationships that I've had, have come as a result of seeing some potential and then investing in that and seeing, okay, is this like my type of person? And the more that the more time you put into something, the more quality you will see as a result. And the same thing comes with friendships.
That's interesting. Why? I think about that a little bit. So there's a lot of people that I'll be like lifting at the arc or something, and I'll be like, hey, like, can I work in with them, like chop it up for like 3-4 sets. And one thing that I started to do, I think this like last year and a half or so, I think just since I got to college, because it almost kind of became a norm, or at least I perceived it to be a norm, is afterwards I'll be like, hey, like, can I just grab your Instagram? I'll see what you're doing on a random Tuesday in November or something. And I've pretty much done that with like everyone that I've just like chopped it up with and like I've enjoyed it. And it's just cool because like now I'll see their story or something and it'll be, oh, like this is what they're up to. And then you can almost just keep tabs on everybody else's life. And I also see like within all of like the stuff that we're talking about right now, a reshuffling of the people who you want to be around, or the people that best suit who you want to become, like slowly like entering your life in alignment to that, So with you going like throughout the years, I take it who you wanted to be in the future your freshman year is probably different than who you want to be in the future now, right?
Yeah.
So actually, I'm curious, like, who did you want to be like coming into college? Like, who was Luke freshman year? Because I don't think I've actually ever had this conversation with you. But like, how is he different? Like, what was he thinking?
I think a lot of it is pretty similar, but I think I just had a better picture of what my future could look like. So a lot of it was just related to holistic growth, right? I wanted to be in really good shape. I wanted to be super athletic because I wasn't that athletic growing up. I wanted to be, continue to be like a sort of social butterfly because I'd realized like this is something that I really like to do. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to be entrepreneurial. And I think maybe in the last year or so, another thing that's been is like more spiritual or like emotionally in tune, maybe than freshman year. I just think the difference has been now I can see what that could materialize into. And as a result of just seeing that, oh, this is possible, like this sort of lifestyle is possible. And I actually know people personally who are 5 years older than me and are thriving in life from a holistic basis, rather than just seeing somebody off Instagram or some sort of outlier on social media. Just gives me a lot more confidence to keep pursuing the things that I'm pursuing. And I think that's sort of been the main difference. I'm sure I've like grown in a lot of different ways, but in general, it's just been, I want to be holistically successful. I want to have like a couple of people that love me. I want to have a lot of friends who I can have a good time with. And I want to be like someone with a Swiss Army knife type of personality where you're continually surprised that, oh, I can do this or that or this, because I'm super interested in a bunch of different things.
Yeah. I want to bring up a question we actually talked about with Will, and it kind of reminds me of that. Like you were kind of just hinting at it with what you're saying with like this holistic balance of things. And one of the things we talked about a while with him was, okay, to have holistic balance, you have to be inputting time into like different domains, right? But at the same time, it can be easy to feel like you're spreading yourself too thin in that way too. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance both of those two things of, hey, I want to be a champion of balance. I want to be going at this holistically, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm actually moving in those areas and that my growth isn't just stagnated.
Yeah. I don't have this all figured out. I guess I have two thoughts is like, one, you got to stick to the fundamentals and you got to have some non-negotiables. And two, you got to realize that you can have it all, just not at the same time. So on like the fundamentals or the like just having a baseline, right, is like every day I wake up and there's certain things that I do to make sure that I'm mentally fit, to make sure that I'm physically fit, and to make sure that I'm pushing the ball forward, or professionally or socially. And then on occasion I'll study some books on philosophy or spirituality and stuff like that. And I think there can be really, really small things that just keep you on track and make sure that you're sort of making your daily deposits, and the pillars that make you who you are not crippling. Not all of them have to be like clicking on all cylinders, because maybe you're really, really invested in one aspect. But as long as you have non-negotiable habits that you stick to, you're never gonna, you may not see results like super, super quickly, but you're never gonna be fading, and you're always gonna get better at that thing. And then, just realizing you can have it all, but not at the same time. It's like there's certain seasons for stuff, right? Like maybe, my sophomore and junior year, I spent a lot of time building my Club Illini blockchain. I was probably less social than I am now, right? I wasn't getting coffee with random people, and I wasn't working out as much as I was before. And as a result of making those sacrifices, I've gotten a lot of other cool opportunities and just like a really cool experience under my belt. But yeah, those are like sort of the two things that I stick to, is like non-negotiables and, doubling down on whatever your season you're in at the moment.
Yeah. I want to touch on that a little bit. So I was reading something somewhere, and it was like balance, like the only way to have balance is to keep yourself super busy. And I know you're like a big thing, and like you're big into like building something, doing something on the side, always always having something else to do other than like the basic stuff that everyone's doing, working out, going to class, like kind of like the basic stuff that you do while you're in college. Do you think that's kind of like helped you with like balance as well, like always having a side project to work on so that your schedule's always full?
I think having a side project always sort of keeps the creative juices going and just makes me energized. Like I like having something that I'm always tinkering with. And I do think that being busy, like if you want work done, give it to the busy man. Like the less busy I am, usually my other habits fall to the side. And the more busy I am, as long as you have like a good balance and you're not just like completely messed up and you're like losing sleep and stuff like that, it's usually easy to keep the good habits because you just got the snowball rolling and stuff like that. But I'm also a really big fan, over break, of just living life a little bit more slowly. And as long as you built up enough evidence that like you're the type of person that works out every day, you're the type of person that is going to reach out to friends and like make sure those connections are meaningful, and you have systems in place to hold you accountable even if you're having an off day. It's okay to not be busy. It's almost like good to not be busy, right? You want to like be able to stop and smell the roses and like actually be in the reality that you're at, rather than being like, oh, like I've got to get to this thing and then this thing and then this. And then before you know it, it's 9:00 and you've got to, you're tired and you want to go to bed. I'm sort of like a big fan now of just going slower.
Yeah. Will was telling us about the word Nixon.
No, I think it was Nixon.
I don't know how it was pronounced, but I looked it up. I think it's spelled Niksen. Have you ever heard of that?
I think he explained it to me one time, but I forgot.
It's just like the practice of doing nothing. Like
keeping like time open on your schedule.
Yeah.
That just blank.
Yeah.
And just wherever this takes me, is wherever it takes me.
Yeah.
This means like watching a football game. Cool. Maybe it's going to an indie concert with my friends. Maybe it's going to a jazz band on a Tuesday night, whatever it may be. And I feel like okay, this semester I've been doing that same thing a lot of just going slower. I mean, we were just talking about it, and I was able to like kind of like, I had this thought the other day that I like put into a tweet that I feel like it's been really true to me. And I'd like to hear your thoughts and whether or not you think that this is true for you or also just maybe true in general. It was, I don't enjoy being busy. I enjoy the ego and being a busy person. Do you see that to be true at all? Because I feel like down here especially, you can be easily rewarded by going from this to this to this. You get this tons of like reinforcement of like, wow, they're doing so much. They're in this, they're in that. Like, look at their resume. They're part of everything.
Totally.
And you can get rewarded by just doing so much, but maybe you just don't enjoy it yourself. So do you think that's almost like a trap to fall into college? Or do you think that there's also good in that as well?
I think there's definitely good. Like, I'm a huge fan of just making shit happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of doing things slowly, as long as I'm not wasting that time and or spending that time in a way that's going to make me feel shameful later on. You know, just going on my phone and stuff. Usually it's like a pretty good day, and I look back on that and I'm happy with how the day went. And especially like the more things that I do, and I feel like, wow, I really lived this day. Like I won the day. It makes me feel really good. Now that said, I'm also a huge fan, and I'm really scared of aimlessly drifting through life and not knowing what is meaningful to me, what fills up my bucket, and doing things for the ego and for the sake of doing them rather than doing them because they're authentic to me. And the way that I sort of approach that problem is just by reflecting and just being observant of what stuff fills up my bucket, what stuff doesn't, doing more of the things that fill up my bucket and less of the things that don't, and not being afraid to try out new things. But yeah, I definitely think it's stupid to just dive into something that really does not feel right deep down. Yeah. And also you don't need for whatever your future thing is. And you're doing it for fake reasons.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really dangerous. And that's where you can fall into some serious like mental health issues once you like come to the realization like, holy shit, I just wasted X amount of time.
Yeah. That's what's so beautiful about breaks at this age. Because when you get in the workforce, you don't really get breaks, right? Maybe it's like 1 to 2 a year.
Yeah, at least not assigned.
Yeah, yeah. So be able to have the month off to just like sit there and reflect. It's really, really, really nice and a blessing.
Yeah.
One thing I'm curious to hear about is just being a super connector in general. Like I know that we've talked like about this a lot in the last year.
Yeah.
But what benefits do you get from being a super connector? And also just what is that? Because someone might not like fully be like understanding what that is. And what benefits, I guess, have you experienced?
Yeah. So being a super connector is, I don't even
like I mean, it's kind of intuitive, but at the same time,
so it's just I think somebody who makes it a priority in their life to connect folks that they think would get along together, either personally or professionally, and really make it a priority that like I want people in my network to know each other and to benefit from knowing each other, and that leads to a surprisingly vast amount of really great things, just by making it can be on the personal side, right? Is I can look at my friends Chaz and Colin Meyer, and they're best friends, and that happened because freshman year I saw that both of them were interested in physics, both of them were computer engineers, and both of them were people that I liked socially. So then I was like, hey, let's all do physics homework together. They hit it off, and they have been best friends ever since. I look at you and Jacob Swinney. I don't know if you met him beforehand, but bringing you both to the jam sessions and sort of bringing you as a part of what our friend group was last year. Now it's like sort of a big bro, little bro thing.
Yeah.
And that's so cool to be able to see, right? Like that alone makes it worth it to just send out a text and intro two people together and be like, hey, would you be interested in meeting this guy? Hey, would you be interested in meeting this girl? Okay, you should both hang out. Or doing like a group hangout. I'm a big fan of like combining friends. But then also from maybe like another, like a professional side is it's really difficult to find ways to provide value to people when you don't have like maybe a podcast is a good way to do it, right? You give somebody a platform. But I think sometimes when you're reaching out to somebody older than you or just reaching out to a peer that you don't know, it can be difficult to find ways to help them out. And the most beautiful relationships and the most fruitful relationships come when you're just like continually helping somebody out with no expectation of what they can give you in return. And one of the easiest ways to help somebody out is to introduce them to somebody that they would hit it off with or somebody that could potentially work with them and is like aligned with them professionally. And for me, that's been an awesome way for someone to remember me as the type of person that when you talk to them, good things happen. Because I'm just keeping them in the back of my mind, and I'm remembering like, oh, this person's really interested in venture capital and is a little bit older and runs a fund. Here on the other side is my other friend. I'm thinking of my buddy Zach Geinzer, and then my other buddy Proby Shandilia, who is a junior and has worked a couple of internships, and they both went to the same college. And I'm like, hey, Zach, you would probably be interested in meeting like a really, really smart, high potential kid who has proven himself, written a book, worked for Daryl Morey. And Proby, you would probably be really interested in somebody who is 3 years ahead of you, living in New York and right next to you, who thinks just like you. Easy connection. And I know they're going to hit it off. And maybe they end up just like you and Jacob, or just like Chaz and Colin, and they end up becoming best friends. And when they think back to their friendship, they think back to me. And I think it's always really nice to have a positive image in somebody else's mind.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Everyone just like looks at you as the guy like, oh yeah, I know my best friend because of Luke. So it's kind of cool if you think about it from your point of view.
Yeah, and tons of companies are now hiring people who basically just do that. I mean, that's basically what a lot of venture capitalists do, is they just get good at finding people who they could either place in portfolio companies or founders that they could hire in or invest in, or invest in the future. And that's like their professional connectors. And if you just do that over 5, 10, 20, 30 years, that leads to compounding network effects.
Compounding. That was the word that immediately was going.
Yeah.
I always have so many thoughts on this topic because it's always like it all compounds. I think about it a little bit with our little friend group that we have, and my two best are like our best friends aren't here. I met through them just like in the elevator, like freshman year. Ended up sitting down eating with them. And then Philip was my roommate, who I ended up meeting through them. Like our other two roommates that we now have, Santino and Mike, I worked with them back home, so they ended up becoming roommates through me. And there's a certain level of like it just puts a smile on my face to be able to think about it. Like, hey, like I don't know. You don't want to like not like selfishly, but like wow, like this is beautiful because at the moment I put in the effort to like make these connections. And obviously, I didn't know what was going to happen. But now to be able to see everybody's enjoying each other's presence. Yeah. It's something that's...
And it's also like, it's something that really works. I mean, we experienced it firsthand. Like a third, like put us together. Like, I think you know a third.
Yeah.
I was friends with a third and he was friends with a third, but we weren't friends. And we both mentioned to a third that we wanted to start a podcast. And he was like, hey, you should meet Isar. Or to me, he was like, you should meet Austin. Yeah. And then, I mean, now here we are. So
Yeah.
I was listening to a Modern Wisdom episode the other day with David Goggins. They were talking about Joe Rogan, and David Goggins explained this trait about Joe Rogan really well, which I liked, and it's very on theme with this, is he's somebody that's made it, and his philosophy is the cake's big enough for everybody to get a piece.
Yeah.
And in college, I think it could be, or even just in life, it's easy to think, hey, like, somebody else succeeding takes away from mine. But I don't really believe that to be the case, right? And if you're consistently going out of your way, maybe it might be a loss in the now, because maybe they're gonna pick somebody else, like they're gonna pick somebody else above you for like whatever position it may be, or I'm trying to think of some other examples, but I think you get the point here. But on the macro, at least how I feel like it's gonna happen, everything is gonna end up being a win, because if you do right by everyone, you're not gonna. I don't feel like it'll ever be a loss in the wrong term. And also, even on your conscious, you're never gonna have to ever think, oh, like I succeeded, but it's only at the fault of somebody else. And that's something that rings true in my mind a lot. But okay, talk a little bit about strategy of how to get from A to B, at least in college, and defining where B is for somebody. But another thing that you talked about there, and just traits that you should seek to upgrade in your video game character during your time in college. So, well, what do you think are some of the most important ones? And also, just like me being curious, like what are some of the ones that you feel like have upgraded the most for you in college, and how did you upgrade them?
Yeah. On your note on the like positive sum games and like
Yeah.
just it's just a better life to be in a scenario where it's
Yeah.
like always a win-win and you are surrounded by people who play win-win type of games rather than win-lose. You know, and people like to do business with people that they like and people that help them out. So it makes no sense to not be somebody that somebody likes and be somebody that helps other people out. And when you look back, like I want to look back at my scorecard as a human and be like, I gave more to the world than I received. You know, I think that's just a good way to measure like I'm a good person.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like why
yeah.
not just be a good person and make that part of you?
Life's just more fun that way.
Yeah,
I don't understand. I mean, who knows? Like, it's just fun to be nice. It's fun to say thank you to someone when they open the door.
Totally.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Like, it's just more fun to live that way.
Yeah.
But you were about to like.
Yeah, but it takes confidence and it takes the willingness to be vulnerable, because sometimes you may make a comment to somebody and they, you know, give you the cold shoulder, and you're like, God, that sucks.
Damn.
Yeah.
Like, damn.
I'm a loser.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you put yourself out there, you made yourself vulnerable, and you know, you opened up a chink in your armor and they like shot a little arrow through. But if you never open up those, you know, parts of your armor, like you're never gonna actually make a real, genuine connection, and that's the only thing that keeps people happy long term, is having people that love them and they love.
Yeah.
Now that said, going on to like the traits of somebody in college that wants to make genuine relationships with people. We talked about one, which is being vulnerable and being willing to, you know, in casual conversation, bring up some real shit. You know, I think it's really easy to fall into a playbook of you're going to say this, I'm going to say this, and we both know how this conversation is going to go, and we're going to stay at the surface level the whole time. That can be fine in some instances, right? Maybe you're not feeling too social.
Yeah. Like, what are you hitting today?
Yeah. But if you
Yeah.
do that all the time, right, and you never say, oh, man, dude, I've been struggling, like my bicep growth, I don't know how to get that activation. One, you're going to miss out on the potential advice from that person and how that person could help you. And two, you're never going to make a real, genuine connection with somebody. You're never going to have a close friend if you never open up. And so you need, like, you will not try to think back to any real ass relationship that you have and think about what were the pivotal points where that turned from a surface level friend to a actual good friend. And it, every single time, I will guarantee you, happened when you were talking about some real ass shit and you were being, you know, sharing your insecurities and willing to open up to them. And they did the same. And so if you want to make real ass connections with people, you got to do that in conversation. Now, that doesn't mean that you just trauma dump on somebody at the bar.
Yeah.
But it does mean that you open up a little bit, right? You talk about, oh, man, you know, I've been really stressed about this thing. And, you know, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying this out, whatever it be. Or you share, like, some stupid story about how you messed up. And that, one, sets the bar to show the other person, hey, this is normal. It is okay to share something like this, and it gives them the confidence to share. And then two, it's like, who knows? Maybe like they have the same experience, and now you're trading funny stories about how you were like super weird or goofy or whatever it is. So one is being vulnerable. Two, I think, is being genuinely interested and charismatic in other people. So I think the interested part is a lot of people end up running out of questions. They feel like they run out of questions to ask somebody. And I think that can happen for two reasons. I think it can happen, one, because they're thinking too much about how they're being perceived in the moment, and they're too in their own head to actually be present. And two, because they're not actually interested, because they've told themselves that this thing that this person is talking about is not interesting. When in reality, I think everything is super fascinating if you are able to get into the details about it. You know, like learning how to do flooring is probably surprising how it actually gets done. You know?
I was like, what are you talking? And then I'm like, oh, like
Yeah,
literally.
like it may
literally
seem super boring.
Like flooring, yeah.
I don't know. If you talk to somebody who lays down floors, like you're probably going to learn something interesting. You're like, oh, I never knew that you had to like put this adhesive here, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, being genuinely interested in people is super helpful. And then being charismatic, which I think just basically means being present in the moment and being your authentic self, being who you are with your best friend. It's like a really great way to just like attract the people that you actually like.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the more that you do those things, the easier it is to make friends and make genuine relationships with people.
Yeah.
I want to touch on two things real quick. Also, if you're about to do flooring with somebody that is incredibly enthusiastic about flooring,
Yeah.
it just makes it so much more exciting because you're
Yeah.
like, damn, they're super interested in this. Like, so it just rubs off on me
Totally.
too.
Yeah, you're like, there's got to be something cool about it. Like, or
Yeah.
I'll pick up on something that I like about
Yeah.
it. So.
Yeah.
I like it's funny, like you'll hear someone like Jacob talk about real estate and you're like, damn, like this man is like so interested in duplexes, man. Like this is awesome.
And the same thing comes with how you can make, I didn't include this, but like if you just come in with some good ass energy, people feed off of that. You know, if you come in enthusiastic, if you come in positive, people are probably going to match that energy. Maybe they want and like, okay, you simmer it down a little bit. You don't just like come in all over aggressive and stuff. And, like, you got to read the room. But if you always come in like this neutral, like you're never like, you need somebody who is an outlier, I think, to bring that conversation to a high energy point. If you're coming at it from a lower energy standpoint.
I was listening to My First Million episode over break, and Sean Puri was talking about like skills that you could have or things you could bring to the table as a younger person that will set you out or set you apart. And he said that one of the most under talked about ones, and I really like this because I had started to reflect on myself and how I handle rooms, and it was enthusiasm. And if you are someone that brings enthusiasm in the room, people are gonna want to be around you because it brings more out of them. And that's huge. So even if it's just coming into your 8 a.m. and just like talking to the TA or like talking to maybe one of the kids in the front row of like, hey, I like your jacket or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like I don't need to be, maybe they then think, oh, like I don't need to be tired right now. Like this is a choice.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that can go such a long way at this age if you do implement it.
Dude, for sure. I've been, over the break, I cold emailed a bunch of people who I consider like future versions of me that I just wanted to learn from, connect with. And after every single call, every single person was willing to help me out, right? Connect me with somebody else or give me advice on how I'm approaching something or, whatever it be. They're like, hey, I want to help you out. And every single time, what they said before that was, man, I love your energy. Man, I love your energy. Let me help you out. And that was it. I just came into it hype. I came into it really interested in that person. And some of these people were people that I was, were sort of on my dream list of like, oh man, that would be crazy if I got to talk to them. I've listened to them for hours. I've read a bunch of their stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this person is so cool. And the fact that person now is trying to help me, now is invested in me. And the main reason that they're invested in me is because I just came across like this and I was super interested. Yeah. And all that is, like you said, is just a choice, right? Think about how, that could come across in so many different hemispheres rather than just one call, right? You come across in your classroom and you're the high energy guy. Well, now others, all of a sudden, most of those people in that class are more friendly to you. Maybe you got like 3 more friends at the end of the semester than you otherwise would.
And then those friends compound because then they introduce you to 3 of theirs.
Yeah, then you introduce them.
And then it all multiplies.
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to like being that genuine like enthusiasm. Like, especially with like your cold emails that you did over break. Like just because these were people that you looked up to like for so long, they're who you want to be in the future. You just showed that enthusiasm because like you said earlier, it's about like not caring how you're perceived. And since you didn't really care about that, you were able to just like show your genuine enthusiasm. They're like, damn, this kid's like actually very interested to be having like an hour of my time today. And it pays off. So it's just about kind of like putting yourself out there, I think.
Yeah. I also want to touch on a little bit something you said there too, and you were like on these calls with people that are like, oh, like I never thought I'd be like on the other side of, even if it's a camera or a table from them.
Yeah.
And at least for me, like when I came into college, and I imagine it's the same thing with you. When I came into college, a lot of the people, I realized how close I was, or how much easier it would be to be in contact with a lot of the people I thought were untouchable. And like, just at least I'm curious for you, like where have you like seen that come true, or maybe what's the best way to do it? Is it to build a beautiful garden, and then that way there's the proof of concept to be able to say, like, hey, like you're kind of like your proof, and like attracts them that way?
Yeah.
Or is it maybe just numbers thing of like cold DMing, or like what do you think the best way to get in contact with some of those people are?
I think it's a holistic thing, right? It's not just you do this one trick and it works. But I think there's a few principles that you could use to like guide yourself. Number one is a closed mouth that never gets fed. You know, I remember I read this book, The Third Door. This guy, Alex Benayan, was telling a story about how he had always looked up to Tony Hsieh. He read his book, Delivering Happiness, and he eventually, you know, met him somewhere, and it was a party or something like that, and Tony was pretending to be a magician or a wizard, and he would grant people wishes. And he goes to Alex and says, "What's your one wish?" And Alex goes and shoots his shot, and it's like, "I want to be the CEO of Zappos for one day," which is Tony Hsieh's job. And Tony goes, "Okay, granted." And he's like, "Okay, what weeks works for you?" He goes, "You know, does February 29th work?" Alex goes, "Yeah, that's great. That's my birthday too. It'd be awesome." And Tony goes, "Okay, let's make it 2 days then. Your birthday week or your birthday weekend or whatever it is." So he goes and he shadows Tony for 2 straight days, every single meeting, every single work session, hangs out at his apartment, gets to know his family, and, you know, gets pulled aside by this guy who's been working at Zappos for a few years. And he's like, "Dude, how did you get this? Like, I've been wanting to be, you know, in the position that you're in for so long." And, you know, Alex Benayan is this 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid. And he just goes, "I just asked." And Alex goes back to Tony and is telling him this about how people were asking him how they got it. And Tony told him that not one person had ever reached out to him and asked if they could shadow him for a day. And I think that story is so representative of reaching out to these people. Is like, you'd be surprised at how few people are actually reaching out and are actually trying to build genuine connections. And so a closed mouth that never gets fed. At worst, you don't get a response. But odds are, if you are showing that you are helping yourself, right? You're showing that you're making steps, and you're not just like this kid sitting on the couch praying that the person you're reaching out to will give you all of the answers and do all of the work for you. They're probably going to respond. If you do your research and you share, you show how you are similar to them, right? You grew up in the same town or in the same, part of the weather, and you make a joke about how, the Midwest winter sucks. And you also say that for me, one common touch point is, I started a club in college, just like you. And you find ways to show them that they're more similar to you than they would expect, and that they can see versions of them, previous selves of them in you. They're much more likely to respond. If you do, I think those 3 things, and you just come across in a genuine way, and you also don't ask for too much, right? A lot of times I'll be like, "Hey, I've got some questions for you. If you're down for a call, that's awesome. If an async chat, that works awesome as well." And you're not trying to take a bunch of their time. I think you'd be surprised how many people would respond.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think I've noticed also is that generally, the people that you look up to, they let's say you look up to someone who's 10 years older. Back 10 years ago, when they were kind of in your spot, they also had a mentor that kind of guided them. Mm-hmm. So like you said, them seeing that younger self in you is just them kind of wanting to like do what their mentor did for them, because generally people who have mentors want to also be like a mentor for someone else. And I've kind of noticed that with like every mentor I've had, it's like they always bring up something that their mentor told them. And it's just really cool to me to see how like the idea of having someone who can like teach you lessons that they've already gone through to kind of make sure that you can like successfully go through them is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
When you said the one thing, it about like nobody asked. It like kind of reminds me of, I mean, and similar in theme to the, like I heard something once about how like the most beautiful girls never have anyone approach them.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks somebody else.
You gotta be a 7, not an 8 or 9.
Because everybody thinks somebody else is doing it.
Yep.
And I definitely think that is the case when it comes to a lot of business stuff too.
Yeah.
It's like you think these people's inboxes are being blown up, and obviously a lot of like the really, really, really big ones.
Totally.
But a lot, why not try?
Yeah.
The worst thing they could say is no, and then who knows? You go from there. And I don't know, like it just sparked that thought in my head. Like I think about it with how like Rohan got Danny Miranda on.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. And like that was just like one message, you know? And then another thing I think about in college is the whole, how many people are you away from whoever, like everybody in the world? Like what's the one rule? Isn't it like you're at most 7 people away from
like probably you're like 3 connections away in reality.
Yeah.
To like people you actually want to get to know.
And
like,
it's,
I don't know anybody in India, you know. So it's like that's probably 6 connections away.
Yeah.
But in America, it's not that many.
Yeah. I think about it with, at least, I think one of like who did Rohan have on? Like I mean, who did Recess have on? Like Sadiq Khan, I think it was. Not Sadiq Khan, maybe, I don't know. But he's a host of like Our Future, and he's like hung out with Elon Musk before. Yes. And I remember sitting down one day and I'm like, I'm 4 people from Elon Musk, bro. like that's ridiculous. And like I think that's another thing like you learn throughout college is like, I mean, I guess that's how like all of this started is you're not as far as you think you are, and why not even try? Because then you just get to skip all the bypasses of being that 4 away and you become 1 away yourself. And that's something like I definitely seem to be true. But how do you, I mean, for this is for both of you guys, but how do you find those mentors? What do you think like the best way to do it is? Because in college, another great thing about mentors is they break your frame on what you think is possible too. Because you're like, whoa. It's like when you're in the gym with somebody and they throw like 315 on the bar and you're like, wow, like I could be doing so much more. Yeah. So how do you find, like, what's the best way to go about like finding mentors?
Ishan, if you've thoughts, go for it. But I also have thoughts. That's my bad.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'll say something first, but for me, it's more just like, who are like people that I see myself in the future. Like there's someone that 5 years from now I want to be doing what they're doing. Or I guess in college it's more like 2 years from now they're doing something that I want to be doing. And like you said, it's like reaching out to them. That's all it is. And I think that's the main way, honestly. A lot of people say like join clubs, join this. I don't think you need any of that. I think it's more just like cold reaching out to them. And most of the time, generally, at least at U of I think people are very willing to help. Maybe that's because we go to a craft school. I don't know. But, yeah, I think that's like the main way to do it.
I think if not clubs, you need something. Like maybe you're not in a ton of clubs, but you have some startup you've been working on for a really long time. Or you have some proof of something you're passionate about.
Yeah,
and also
showing that you're actually helping yourself.
Yeah, and willing to put in actually doing, not just talking about it. Totally. But I think that definitely goes a long way.
Along that note, I have a few thoughts on like mentors and stuff like that, which is number 1, really questioning why you want to talk to that person, and what your questions are for them. Because I've found a lot of the reason that I end up wanting to talk to someone is for the ego of saying that I've talked to this person, which is a really dumb reason to reach out to somebody. And obviously, as That's usually the initial layer, and I can peel that back and actually find real reasons, real questions that I can ask this person that they are uniquely suited to answer because they're similar to me or because they've done this path before, and they have like actual experiences to talk on. But I think a lot of time people just want to reach out to somebody to say that they're connected, and that's like a really dumb way to reach out because then you're not really going to have any like real genuine question to ask when you're chatting with them. And you're also not actually pushing the ball forward to get to the place you want to be because you're not actually asking the questions that are blocking you from getting to that place. You're just feeding your ego. And I think that's one big thing is to really figure out why do I want to talk to this person? And that can make the conversation that much better. And I think also having a lot of respect for those people's times, right? Like 30 minutes of somebody's time when they're older, they have kids, and they've got this stuff is it's a lot to ask. And if you just have the mentality that, oh, this person's my mentor, they're going to help me ask, like they're going to be like my dad or my mom and answer any question that I have, you're going to be sadly mistaken. And that person's going to start to be like, yo, who is this leech who just like keeps asking me to do the work for them? And you're also robbing yourself of actual critical thinking because you're just outsourcing it all to somebody else. And so I think those two things like really go understated. And if you think about it, a lot of the questions that you have, you can probably just, if it's for somebody who's famous, who's created some content and written a lot, you can probably just ask ChatGPT to act like that person and then ask the question. And you're going to save yourself some time and you're going to save that other person some time. And, and you're also going to realize like, oh, wait, my ego's like was driving most of this. And usually ego-driven decisions are, not that great.
I've definitely seen that to be true with like when I reflect back on some of the interactions I've had. I'm like, yeah, like the first reason why I wanted to talk to them was solely for the reason to be able to say I talked to them. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. It's something I'm gonna have to reflect on later. I remember listening to Hormozy lecture to like students at like one point. It was like a year ago, so he's super popular, right? And it was hosted by the teacher. She opens it up to Q&A at the end. And some kids are asking questions. And a lot of them are very, like, oh, you could just kind of, like, find them on the internet. And I think he like, called them out. He was like, why are you guys asking me these questions? Like, this just isn't worth my time.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he could just sit there and keep answering them. And so he's almost doing them a favor by calling them out for it because... Yeah. They're getting 30 minutes to an hour of his time, and that's super valuable. And for him to say, like, hey, like, you guys could find this on the internet. What you can't find is questions that you ask me that are either specific to yourself or questions that imply some string of actions after they're answered. Mm-hmm. And I remember listening, I was, like, doing my job, like, at the time, and I'm like, damn. I'm like, that's good. Like, asking questions to find out or asking questions to provide you with a more informed framework to like align your actions in the future helps. Like you're listening so much more attentively because what you're gonna do depends on what they say. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something I remember hearing. And I'm like, oh, like that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And if you don't know a question to ask, then you should probably do a little reflecting inside. And figure out what is actually causing the stress that I think this person can help with. And you can probably answer a lot of like the intro questions yourself. And maybe you actually realize you don't even need to reach out to them and you need to do something completely different. Mm-hmm. And so it's like a good exercise. At least it has been for me as I'm like starting to recruit and stuff like that, is figure out like what are the real questions on my mind. You know, I'm like trying to figure out what roles I want to do. It's like, okay, well, what roles do I want to do? But my real question is, well, what does the lifestyle look like? Or does this lifestyle enable these things that I care about in a job? Or does this job enable me to do these things? Is it built for the personality type of somebody who likes to bop and weave between things or somebody who is very, very disciplined? Those are the questions that I actually care about. But I didn't even realize that I cared about those questions until I thought to myself, what the fuck am I going to ask this person that I reach out to and really respect their time. You know, it wasn't until I came to that point of writing the email or of preparing for the call that I realized what the real questions were on my mind. And if you don't know what the real questions are on your mind, you're never going to be able to get the answers that you want and make progress going forward. And I think that's like a really great exercise that I've started to do and that other people can do. If you're looking at somebody and you're like, oh, this person's so interesting, but I just don't know what to ask them. That isn't just a basic question of what would you do if you were my age.
Yeah, that makes me think about a little bit about how I reach out to some of the mentors that I kind of look up to. It's like, I never thought of it like that. Like, why am I actually reaching out to them beyond like a surface level? Obviously, like I'll ask them questions that are more than just like, hey, what should I do? Like, like, how are you supposed to answer that? Like, you can't answer that.
Totally.
But that's something I need to think about more. And it piques my interest. I got to think about that more.
Yeah. And I think it's totally normal. Like, you want to reach out to them, you want to keep that connection going, and you want to build a relationship.
Yeah.
And if you do that and you want to do that, then don't ask for something. Just give. You know, share them an article and give them the 2 points that you thought they might find interesting. Or send them somebody that you may think they want to talk to, right? Or give something else, right? That's how great relationships form, is when you give more than you get and you never keep score. And so that's what I always think about. I was like, okay, I want to reach out to this person, but I don't know what to ask. Well, maybe I take the work all off their plate and I just send them something, no expectation, just thought of you, thought you'd like this. Nothing.
That's interesting.
Give what you get and never keep score.
Yeah.
Give more than you get.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Yeah, that's like, that's gold right there. I love it.
Put it on a shirt and the sunset in the background.
Yeah, like nice little quote. One thing that I remember hearing once, or I guess on that same topic, is, do you really think if you took an hour to think of potential questions that you wouldn't be able to come up with any? It's like, no, you're gonna be able to think of some if you're really reflecting that deep about it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of, I guess, the actionables that come out of a lot of the this conversation is just make the time for those things.
Yeah.
And not being way too busy and like keeping like some open time on your schedule. Because the other day I had breakfast with some real estate professional, and it's interesting to see like where like what your standard is at the time. And it was only the night before that I like really started to like do a ton of research. I had already knew some previous stuff, but I'm like, okay, let me do like a really, really, really deep dive and just see what I could find.
Yeah.
I ended up seeing that he was on 2 podcasts, and I also saw that I went through like every little thing on his LinkedIn. I'm like just going on the rabbit hole, just like whatever just like piqued my interest. Like not even just, it said he was like raised in Michigan. I'm like, yeah, like where in Michigan? And like where did he go to school? Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, oh, cool, he went to MSU. Like what was going on at MSU like at the time? And then you just like, when you get interested in the person rather than the role they're playing, you could really find a lot of gems too. And that's a very valuable frame switch that I've had, which is, hey, like view them as a person. Like we're all humans.
Totally.
What's the term you always like? We're all monkeys like walking on a rock. And when you view someone for like the human or the monkey they are, it's like, oh, like they're not just the label of a CEO at Procter and Gamble or like something like that. They're like a lot more than that. And I feel like that can go like a long way too. And I feel like you kind of get like lullabied into that trap in college of seeing people for the role and the resume. Yeah. Not the person.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. And it can give you like more confidence going into it and be like more of a normal person too. Because if you treat somebody like you're a fan of them, you're never going to break that relationship. But if you treat them like a peer, but you treat them with respect, right? And you come prepared. It's not just like you're shooting the shit with a friend. You understand that this person's time is valuable and that you are the one who should be probably putting in more work because they are the one who's actually giving you the value, right? Like you don't really have that much to offer. They're the one who's taking the time to give you advice or give you whatever. And it usually ends up like a pretty great conversation. And maybe it can go a bunch of different ways, right? Because you know them as a person, you're interested in them as a person, you're not just siloed into asking professionally related questions. But there is still that heavy undertone of respect and of purpose within the conversation that I think is really important if you're approaching somebody who's where you want to go.
One of the things we talked about earlier that I wanted to ask a little bit more on, or I comment a little bit more on, which was just charisma and that trait as a skill. And I feel like there's it's really easy to think, oh, he's super charismatic, or he really knows how to work a room. He just had that his whole life.
Yeah.
And it's not really viewed as this thing that you can improve.
Totally.
So what are some of the benefits of thinking of it as something you can improve, and how can somebody discover all the little tactics and strategies, putting your arm up on a seat like this that makes you feel a little bit more confident after watching Christmas on Command's course. Yeah. And all of those all those little things that just slowly add one more penny to the scale to make you a little bit better. How can somebody discover all of those skills?
Yeah. I think there's a few different ways. One is a quick story. A lot of people come up to me and it's oh yeah, Luke, you're just this is a super social guy. Dude, my freshman year of high school, literally everyone hated me. Not everyone. Dude, my siblings hated me, which is I guess a little bit normal, right? Yeah. Older siblings, I'm the youngest kid. But my friends were ditching me. My teachers were calling me out and stuff like that. And it all came because I was just a little prick, right? And a bunch of different reasons. But now I went from that of this little fucker to somebody who is friends with a bunch of people. Yeah. And is
could you give one little story on because we're just using labels. We need to be able to have a little.
Oh man, I mean, I would let me think of a story of. Dude, I mean, I would just try to win every little conversation. Somebody would say something, and if it didn't even relate to the point, but if they were wrong about something, I was making sure to call them out. Or if my teacher was talking, but I had something funny to say to my buddy, I was gonna tell my buddy, and I didn't care if my teacher was talking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was just doing things to, I guess, feed my ego, for lack of a better term. That's not a specific example, but it came up all the time.
Yeah.
Where I was this kid who sort of a know-it-all and super hyper competitive and didn't really understand how to read somebody's emotions and match them, and all of these other tiny little skills that you talk about that I have as a result of being a student of the game accumulated. And now I'm I seem like a completely different person socially because I've adopted different principles and I've adopted different tactics and learned them and practiced them and honed them as an authentic part of who I am. But that's a little side tangent. Where somebody can learn about this stuff. I mean, the first place I think of, you go to my personal website.
Hey,
little
plug.
Yeah.
Since I'm a student of the game, I love curating links to good stuff. And if you go to lukeclancy.me and you go to the influences section and you scroll down to on making meaningful relationships or on talking to people, I have 10 different articles or podcasts or YouTube videos that I found to be really, really helpful for me. And they're all just there for free. So that would be the number one place I'd go. And I also think that as you just try to be a student of the game with this stuff pops up.
Yeah.
And you learn from other people and you see, how you perform and being okay with being damn, I fucked up. And I fumbled so it was such a bad story. And I could feel myself rambling and not getting to the point and not making it entertaining. But I'm dude, I'm not trying to be a great storyteller now. I'm trying to be a great storyteller in the future. And I'm not that good right now. And the only way for me to get good is to get these reps in. Yeah. And I'm okay with sort of eating shit a little bit and embarrassing myself. I'm still coming across with good energy. And, I'm still interested in stuff like that in this other person. So it's going to be okay. and I might just like flop this one story, but like when I'm 30, you better believe I'm gonna kill these stories that I tell.
Yeah, got to
Even
get the
though I'm not
reps
good
in,
right
man.
now. Yeah.
Got to get the reps in.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's where I'd say somebody look. Charisma on Command's also a good one. How to Win Friends and Influence People is a really good book. Never Eat Alone is a good book, and if you look at Derek Sivers' website, like SIVE .rs, and then you look at his book notes for Never Eat Alone, I think that gives some great tips. Yeah, I don't know. In general, I think it's just like learn, like look it up.
Yeah.
Watch it. I would also read on making genuine connections or something like that. It's on my website, but I just read it yesterday. It was fire. It was really good. And yeah, I mean, I just think when you're a student of the game and you're actually actively looking for these things and actively implementing them, it's only a matter of time before you find the stuff that sticks.
I love that phrase, student of the game. We heard the same thing from Will.
That's Will's LinkedIn bio.
Yeah.
It's so funny, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. A lot of this is just like so, because a lot of it just like so me too.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think about if I was 12 or not 12, let's go like 13. Let's say I was like listening to something like this, I'd be like, because I was like super weird and awkward too.
Mm-hmm.
Little asterisk as to how my friends didn't want to, like, if they were hanging out with girls, they're like, we're not bringing Austin. Like, he's not coming. He's going to fumble this for us.
Yeah.
So very, very awkward, right? And really wanted to change. And maybe I would be, I guess, if I was listening to a conversation like this, I'd be all fired up. Like, okay, I just got to read this book, read that book, go through the courses, study all this stuff. And then I'd be like, yeah, I'm good. And then I never actually I was just always so, I didn't realize it, but I was never doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, that's the thing, is you need to take the risk and be like, being willing to like, maybe, okay, let me see if I could really like twirl the story to like really get people going with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll try to go up to that 9 or 10 and like see what happens.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm going to go up to that really professional, like whoever that professional is across the room, and just see what happens. And I mean, that's like the raw thing, is you just got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot harder truth to swallow. But once you do swallow that, and you like you make little pieces, little wins that you could experience to like get you to that end goal that you want to get to. I think that's what did it for me, is I'm like, okay, I can't really tell that story in that group yet, but you know what I can do? I can wear a pink scarf to school. And then maybe, I'm going to get some weird looks. People are going to comment, but I'm going to build up that muscle of just not caring.
Yeah.
And that's step 1.
Yeah.
So I vividly remember on the calendar, pink scarf to school tomorrow. Wore the pink scarf, and then the next day I'm like, okay, I got to do something. And I'm like, I'm just going to walk into some room I shouldn't be in, and then like just immediately exit. So there was, okay, like, not. Okay, yeah.
I'm going to walk in the girls' bathroom.
I know. Yeah. So what I ended up doing is I walked in.
Went to the same place.
My mind went there too after I said it. But I just walked into some classroom like I wasn't supposed to be in. And then everyone stares at me. And I'm like, and then I just leave. And I'm like, it wasn't that bad. But like it was harder to do when I was opening up the door. And then it was just all these like granular wins that like really help you win on that long time horizon. What you want is Luke when you're 30.
Yeah, you like change your identity, right? Like you're the type of person who just doesn't care if you walk into the wrong room.
Environments help so much with that. Yeah. And that's one of the best things about coming to college.
Totally.
Is you have this whole new world to create yourself in. And I think that's one of like the most exciting, and also I guess for some people most scary thing about college.
Yeah. Speaking of change a little bit, this is for both of you. How have you kind of like seen yourself, like grand scheme of things, like if you could split like from when you were, I'm not gonna say from when you were born, because like no one remembers that, but like from when you were like 5, 6 till like now, if you could split it into like 2 stages of like you felt like you were this, and then there was like you changed and then you were this, like what would those two stages of you kind of be?
I think my big shift was probably my freshman year when I went
College, high school?
high school.
Okay.
Okay.
When it was like during a time after I got cut from my freshman year basketball team, which I totally thought I was going to make. And I was down bad. And like my friends didn't really like me. And my siblings didn't really like me. And I had to like really look myself in the mirror and look at the reality that I'd created for myself, whether I liked it or not. And I think the big thing that stemmed from that I didn't like was how competitive I was. You know, I grew up romanticizing these people who are like the top 1%, the Michael Jordans, and a lot of them are super hyper competitive. And I thought that was what was the best characteristic in somebody, right? Like your will to win. And I admired that, and I tried to embody that, and it like totally tore a lot of the relationships in my life and a lot of the good things in my life. So freshman year, I think I realized like I went from externally super competitive to channeling that more towards like internal growth and not being competitive and like cutting down on myself, but you know, just like changing the direction of that engine of trying to be great or be good. And rather than try to be great relative to other people, I'm just going to be great for myself. And I think that has led to like at most of the good things in my life now, and was a very clear turning point for me. Yeah, that was a big one.
You put a lot of, I guess, what I had thought into words that I wasn't able to put into words, because that was very, very similar and like parallel to me too. Is I'd be up late, well, maybe not that late, it was like 10, but like it was late back then,
Yeah.
you know, watching like a goal cast, like Kobe Bryant, like 10 rules for
Classic.
success thing.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I'm waking up at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Like I'm doing it. You know,
Yeah.
like I need to do this
So
to win.
classic.
And then I read Can't Hurt Me. I'm like, I need to run like 15 miles a week. I need to be at like starting shortstop on my baseball team. I need to be lifting like 5-6 days a week.
Yeah.
I need to be getting A's in every single one of my classes.
Totally.
And like you said, all of these external things that people considered as wins that you would receive status from. And I mean, I was killing it in them all, but at the same time, that was one of the most like exhausting periods of my life. And we've talked about this before. It helped build the engine, which was great. And since then, it's been great to be able, I guess. I'm gonna rephrase that a little bit. So building the engine was super important, because like with anything, wherever I want to go, I need to have a really strong engine, right? But at the same time, in high school, I didn't have the right direction. And since I've gotten to college, I've been able to supply myself with a more complete understanding of how I'm going to get where I want to go, but also defining where I want to go as well. And I think just meeting so many people at college, like honestly, like through you, like especially, has granted me with that understanding of, okay, how am I going to get there? And what does this whole ecosystem look like? And I think that that's very valuable. So yeah, like similar to you, I think I changed a ton in high school, but also in college. Like my first 2 years of high school, I've had so many friends from home tell me I've changed so much.
Really?
Which is an interesting thing to hear. Do you feel that too? Like when someone tells you you've changed, like it's hard to know how to react. You
Yeah.
know?
I feel like most people's perception of that is like when someone tells you you've changed, you think that they mean bad, and then then they might be like, oh, like I don't mean bad, and then you're like more intrigued by it. At least that's the way I kind of have perceived it in the past, because like I've gotten that a lot too. It's like, oh, you've changed, and I'm like, oh, like is that bad? But I think you slowly start to realize yourself that like it's not bad usually.
Yeah. It's good. Changes life.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be kind of weird if you were still your 18-year-old self.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like the core of you, right? And I think that's like established when you're 2, 3. At least that's what my parents say.
I believe that to be true, yeah.
But how you come across and how you fit within the realms of other people like you probably want to be a little bit different, right? You probably don't have everything figured out, and hopefully you change in a good way.
My mom always tells me when I was young that so I could like walk and like run like before I actually like what I would do is we had this couch in my back room, and I would just be like walking and running like while holding the couch. So like I wasn't like I didn't really take my first full steps yet. So my first full steps were like me like running across a room because I'm like I need this to be perfect before I actually do it. And when you said that like your core was made when you were that young,
Yeah.
like I see that to be the case like so much with myself, like all those little stories that were like I'm so that way still. And it's cool to see the change but around the same center, you know. And I think that's something that's beautiful in a lot of ways, which is just life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I have like a similar story with that. I've always been like very stubborn. I still think I'm stubborn, which is not a good thing, but I'm aware of it.
Depends the scenario.
Yeah, but so I remember my mom always tells me. So when I was getting potty trained, I don't remember this, but they say it's true. I waited till the day I was 3, and like I was aware that it was my birthday, like coming up. It was like my birthday's July 26th. It was like the 3rd week of July or whatever, and I knew how to go to the bathroom on my own and everything. And I told everyone the day I turned 3. Like, I'll be potty trained. Like, I'll be potty trained. I'll be fine the day I turn 3. And my mom's, like, freaking out because, like, that fall I had to start preschool, I think. And you can't. You needed to be potty trained to go to preschool.
Yeah.
And I told everyone the day I turned 3, like, I'll be potty trained. And I had, like, enough going on in my mind that I knew, like, July 26th was my birthday. They celebrated my birthday 2 days earlier because we were in Vegas with my uncle. And we celebrated on the 24th. And my mom tells me that I told everyone that I'm not 3 yet, so I'm not potty trained. And the day I turned 3, I started going to the bathroom on my own, no diaper, nothing needed.
Yeah.
And that's it's the funny joke in our family that like he's been stubborn since he was little. Like he knew how to go to the bathroom on his own the whole time, but he waited till he was 3. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
That's good. That's good. Well, I think what we'll do to like kind of wrap it all up is we talked about a lot, right? But at least for anybody listening, we should lay out a list of actionables of things to implement, or I guess things to like keep in the back of your head, right? So at least we could like, I guess the biggest one for me that I want to implement this semester, and we're all at different stages, right? Maybe you can answer like to the freshman that like is just coming in.
Okay.
But at least for me, like my sophomore year going forward, biggest thing that I want to focus on is just freeing up time and moving slower. And how I guess I put that into place is when I'm asked like, hey, do you want to be like on this executive board for this, or do you want to like try out for it? Really thinking about why I would want to be doing it, and whether or not it actually makes sense for me. Or am I just doing this for the resume? Am I doing this because I don't want the person that's asking me to view me in any negative light? And be more conscious of the decisions I'm making and not trying to add too much on my plate.
Yeah.
So
be more wise, because wisdom's the understanding of the long-term implications of your decisions. You just think it through a little bit more.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. It's I gotta actually do it, because I all the time I talk about I'm gonna do it. Like going into last semester, I was like, this is gonna be this semester. I just put my head down 2-3 things, and the next thing I'm rushing a business fraternity. I'm onto executive boards for stuff, and then have a part-time job. It's like, Austin, bro, like what did we do? What are we doing?
Yeah.
But what was good about that is it left a sour taste in my mouth of like, hey, look at what we just did. We don't want this to happen again. And aversion is so strong in your mind that going into this semester, it makes the decisions a lot easier to turn down. Or at least think about them more through. So
I think mine's like kind of similar. My big thing this semester is like doing less better. I feel like last semester I did so much that it was like I just wasn't making the right commitments and enough of a commitment to like anything I was doing. It was like I was giving 75% to everything and 100% to nothing. And at that point it was like, what am I doing right? Like nothing, not even right. Like what am I doing like great? Nothing I was doing was great. Aside from school, I think I did well in school, but everything else I was doing was just like 75%. And now when I look back on that, I'm like, I wish I kind of just did like 2 of those things and I did them at like 110% so that I could actually look back on them and learn from it and gotten like the full experience from all those things. And I mean, this semester, my like way to kind of do that has just been like saying no and yes. So like saying no to some of the things that people call like right, which is like joining all these clubs, like being in all these like leadership positions, and then saying yes to like, for me, it's like the things that allow you to kind of live in the present, which is like going to like fun things that you wouldn't normally do. Like by fun, I mean not like Cam's line, like going to like random things that are going on, just like cool different things that are happening on like a random Thursday night or whatever it might be. Just like saying yes to the right things more often. And I mean, yeah, we'll see how that goes at the end of this semester, but
We'll hold each other accountable.
yeah,
We'll see each other at least 2-3 times a week. So
at least.
yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's great. I got one for myself and one for, I guess, the young freshman.
Yeah.
For the young freshman, I would recommend being the most interested person in the room at all times. If you're the most interested person in the room, the questions will come easily. If you're the most interested in the person in the room, you're going to make more friends. If you're the most interested person in the room, more good things will happen to you. Don't worry about being the most interesting person there, because that doesn't matter as much as being interested in other people does. And if you're interested in enough things for long enough, you're going to be the most interesting man in the world. You know, like you don't become interesting without becoming interested in something else. So that's what I would recommend. And also just being a student of the game. You know, if you recognize I'm not very good at talking to people, well, look up how to talk to people, how to get better at it, and find places that are high signal with good reviews. You can go to my website and find those resources or find stuff on your own, and then create a system to hold yourself accountable. You know, like for me, it was, anytime anybody asked me how my break was or what I've been up to, I say anything but good, you know, like that Charisma on Command thing. I'll try to tell a story or I'll say something random, and sometimes I'll hesitate and sometimes it won't be good. But I know every single day I'm going to get reps in at like storytelling and this thing I want to get better at that I'm not that good at within like my conversationalist game. And then for me, I want to really, really leverage the student card and just...
Before it expires.
Yeah, before it expires, you know, reach out to the people that I don't really have business talking to and find a reason that I do have business talking to them and get their empathy as a student and just build like a really genuine connection and try my best to get used to the failure that will inevitably come when a lot of those people don't respond to me. Because right now I have like a solid hit rate, but I can still feel myself hesitating to send it to somebody or waiting for the right moment or waiting to do more research or finding an excuse to not just put myself out there. And so I want to be like really, really, really have a high bias for action for doing that and trust that the right job will present itself and then all these other opportunities will come as well. But yeah, that's like my goal for this semester.
I have one more question because I'm curious. Do you ever set goals that are like, you know how like when we were young, you're taught to like set those SMART goals?
Yeah.
Like specific, measurable,
Totally.
actionable. I don't remember realistic and time, whatever.
Yep.
Do you think that that's the best way to go, or do you think it's to try to seek to define enough whys to be motivated to just to want to do it for the sake of doing it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'd say it's probably different for everybody, and it's definitely been different for me throughout each semester. And as I've grown, I would bias towards referencing Atomic Habits if you're going to refer to anything goal setting wise, because it's a great book, or just James Clear's newsletter, and his articles are really, really good that can help you form your own answer. But for me right now, I try to not set big goals. And instead, I just treat goals as a means to create a system that will lead to good outcomes. So I'll set smart systems, For example, it's like send 3 DMs or cold emails every single day. And just do that and just trust that if I send enough inputs, it'll work out well. Maybe some of those emails suck and I won't get a response, but it's about building that muscle of like, it's sending 3 a day is super easy, and then I can up it to 5, or maybe I'll keep it at 3. But by the end of the semester, that's going to be hundreds of things sent out. And so rather than having the goal at the end of like send 500 in a semester, it's just my goal is to like use the student access card and look back at the semester and be like, yeah, I really did exhaust it. And that then I back into, okay, how can I do that? Well, a sustainable system is 3 a day. And it'll be really specific and measurable so that I can actually hold myself accountable. And I'll do that with all the different pillars in my life. And that's how I usually go about it.
Yeah, I like that. Like measuring the inputs rather than the outputs. Because if you tether your emotions to the outputs, who knows what will happen.
Yep.
But if you can control the inputs, which is, super cliche. But yeah, on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Yeah.
Think on these things and essentialism in the background. Great additions. But yeah, we'll wrap it up here. And thank you. And for everybody listening, have a great rest of your day, night, whatever it may be. And yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it, boys. I'm going to go at like the thank you.
Yeah, sure.
You'll just got it. All right, yeah, boys, I appreciate you having me on. If anybody's interested in connecting with me or seeing some of the cool stuff that I learn, I send out a newsletter every single Friday. And all the information that you would need to contact me or just learn about the things that I've learned is at my website, which is just lukeclancy.me.
Sick.
Peace.
Yes.